All right, fifth grade. Happy Tuesday. Here we are. We are going to today move into a little bit of social studies. All right, so it's been a little bit. You may remember the last thing that we did in social studies was talk about our 13 colonies project. We talked about the 13 colonies and what those colonies were like. Today, we are going to talk about the colonists. Okay, who were the colonists? All right. Now, the colonists, it's pretty easy. It's just the people who lived in the 13 colonies. Okay, so colonists are the people who lived in the 13 colonies. So the first thing that I want us to do today is I want us to kind of look at a map here and get a couple different ideas of where these people are from, the different places that were important during this time. So right now we are talking about the 1700s. Okay. We are talking about before there was a United States of America, okay? Before there was a Canada, before there was a Mexico. Okay, so first let's look at the colonies here. All right, so the colonies, the people that lived over here in the colonies, okay, the free people were from England, and the slaves, I need to make this bigger, obviously, and the slaves from the Indies. Apparently did not give myself enough room here. Okay, so the people that lived in the colonies, we had free people that were colonists, we would call them. They were here. Okay, colonies. They were people that used to live over here in England. Okay, here's England across the ocean. That is where the King and Queen of England live. Used to be from there, and then they settled in the colonies. Then the slaves that lived in the colonies were either from the Indies, what we call this is, we'll also call this the people call this the Gulf of Mexico. It's a lot of different things you can call it. We're going to call it the Indies here. And then also Africa. That's where slaves came from. Okay? All right, now England, the families of the colonists and the king. Okay, so that is who lived in England. All right, so the families of these colonists, these people that moved over here to the colonies, they had family that still lived in England. That's also where the king lived. Okay, so technically right now, yes, the colonies are very far away from England. If you look, it's across the whole ocean. All right, but the king of England is still actually in charge of the colonies. Okay, we're going to talk about how that leads to a lot of problems in the future. Okay, this slide here, I have a little video. It's let's see, I think it's Scholastic News, kind of what life was like in the colonies. I think it's about 4 minutes. I want you to watch that. Okay, so you can pause the video here. Go ahead and watch that. It's on slide number 4, and then once you are all done, come on back and push play. Okay. All right. So hopefully you've seen that video now, and you are ready to move on. Here we are on slide number 5. So these next two slides, 5 and 6, we're going to talk about what was good about colonial life, so life in the colonies over here, and then also what was bad about colonial life. Okay, so first, what was good? Freedom. Freedom was good. All right, these people that used to live in England, they wanted to come to the colonies on purpose. It wasn't just an accident. They wanted to do it on purpose. They wanted freedom. All right, so the colonies were able to start their own cities. Okay, so cities like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, those are all cities that were created during this time to get away from England. Okay, so they were able to start their own cities, practice their own religion, very important. There were some religions that were kind of frowned upon in England. The king wasn't very tolerant of all different kinds of people, so they were able to go and practice their religion now and get away from the fancy royalty of England, right? The king, the queen, the prince, the princess, all those things, they were able to get away from that, right? They just wanted to live on their own. They didn't want to have to worry about, the king and who was going to be next, and are they a crazy person? Are they going to be a good king? They didn't want to deal with that anymore. They wanted their own freedom. Okay, so that was one good thing about colonial life. Another good thing about colonial life for the colonists, the people that lived in the colonies, land. Okay, so you could see this as a good thing and a bad thing. All right, so land here, the colonists, were easily able to steal land from the Native Americans. Okay, we talked about Native Americans last unit. We talked about how Native Americans were not really prepared to handle all of the diseases that were going to be passed on to them from the colonists. And so really the colonists were able to easily steal that land from them. Okay, so if you're somebody who is from England and you're settling into this new place, you're happy about that. You want that land. Obviously, if you're a Native American or somebody who's reading this now in the future, we obviously don't see that as a good thing, right? Native Americans got their land taken away. Okay, here's a little painting down here, kind of a reenactment of some battles that happened between the colonists and the Native Americans. Okay, so that was good about colonial life if you were somebody who were moving from England. Okay, all right. What was bad about colonial life? Okay, so first, slavery. It's a bad thing. Okay, so people that were forced against their will to work, right? So people that were forced to work and for no money. So we're talking about African Americans and some Native Americans. They really struggled to even survive colonial America in the colonies. Okay. If you were somebody who was a slave, it was very hard to survive and make a living, and to be, you couldn't collect money, you couldn't earn money. It was a terrible life if you were a slave. Okay. And then also, another bad thing about colonial life, the people that had moved from England, they did not like that they had to pay taxes to King George III all the way across the ocean. Okay, so people that lived, if you need to get these notes, you can pause. I'm going to go back to this map here. So people that lived over here in the colonies, they were having to pay taxes to help build roads, to help build buildings, to help really pay the king and the queen all the way back over across the ocean in England. They did not think that that was fair. Right? They didn't care about the roads and the buildings in England. They lived over here. Right? So they did not think that that was fair. They did not like that. That was another bad thing about colonial life. Okay? All right, so those are the colonists. That's who they were. That's a little bit about their story. We will continue to talk about them. We're going to start talking a little bit later about how, even though they are upset with the king, they actually fight in a war with the king. And we'll kind of start talking about that later this week. Okay? If you have any questions on anything, office hours at 10:05. Otherwise, I will see you at our Google Meet.